Hi, in this lesson I'm going to show you how to create an Azure virtual machine. I'll also walk you through some of the options that you need to choose when you're creating an Azure virtual machine. Let's get right into it. Once you're on the portal's landing page, you click on Create a Resource. How about we go with Windows Server 2019 Data Center. Now, as you can see, we have several tabs here. But starting off with the basic tab, the first option we have here is to select a valid subscription. When you want to create any resource on Azure, we need to have a valid subscription to do so. Next is for us to create a resource group that is going to house this virtual machine, or you can also choose from a list of resource groups that you've already created. How about we create one right now, and I'll call this AZ900VM. Click on OK. Next, let's give our virtual machine a name. I'm going to call this Windows Server 2019 VM. The first decision we have to make is choosing a region. The rule of thumb here is for us to choose a region that is closest to us to prevent any latency issues. Except, of course, you have some compliance requirement that makes it mandatory to go with a particular region. So here I'm going to go with the South African North region. Next, you need to decide whether or not you want high availability for this virtual machine. And the options we have include availability zone, virtual machine skill set, and availability sets. When you choose any of these options, it will let Azure know that this virtual machine will be part of a group of other virtual machines that will need to be located in a different data center or a different physical geography for the sake of high availability. We'll get into all of this at a later time in this course, but for now, we'll go with no infrastructure redundancy required. Next, we'll need to select a security type. The options we currently have is between standard and trusted launch virtual machines. Standard comes with a basic security for your virtual machines, whereas the trusted launch option helps to improve the security of your virtual machine. For example, it protects your virtual machine against advanced and persistent attacks. In this example, I'm going to go with standard. Next is for us to select an image. There are different images of choice that we can choose from the list here, as you can see, but we already have Windows Server 2019 data center selected for us, and we're happy with that option, so we'll go with that. The next option that we have is for you to decide whether you want to take advantage of Azure Spot discounts. This is a choice that you can work with if you're looking to save yourself cost on Azure. But you need to keep in mind that if you choose to go with Spot VMs, Spot VM instance can be taken away from you if the pay-as-you-go customer demand for capacity increases. So for that reason, it is not an option you want to consider for mission-critical workloads. You can consider this if you want to run, say, for example, a batch job with multiple virtual machines, where if one virtual machine goes down, you can still get by. So in this example, we won't be going with Spot VMs. Next, we'll need to select a virtual machine size that meets our need. One thing you will notice here is that depending on the virtual machine size that you select, right in front of it, you are able to see the associated cost for that virtual machine size. So I'll maintain the default that I have here. Next, we'll need to create a user account who will be the administrator of this virtual machine. So I'm going to give it the username of Kazeem, and I will assign it a password. Next, we'll have to choose whether people from the outside world can connect to this virtual machine. There are a couple of options to pick from. We can choose to deny people from connecting to this virtual machine. In that case, I won't be able to have access to the virtual machine myself. I'd like to be able to connect to this virtual machine, so I'm going to go with RDP, that is remote desktop. This will allow anyone to connect to this virtual machine through the remote desktop protocol. And the last option that we have on this page is another cost saving option that allows us to bring our on-prem server licenses with us to Azure, thereby saving 49% of your cost. Microsoft in this case will only be charging you for compute and not for Windows Server license if you choose this option. In my case, I don't have an on-prem Windows Server license to work with, so I'm going to leave this unselected. As you can see, we have a couple of other tabs here. For the rest of the tabs, we'll accept the default values that we have, since we're going to be looking at how to create many of these at a later time in this course. So I'll choose to accept the default value, move next to networking. We're going to be touching on this also at a later time in the course. So I'll proceed next. Next is tags. Tags helps us to track and organize our resources in Azure. Again, more on this later in the course. So I'll click on review and create. Good, it has passed the validation check. So everything looks good. I can click on create now to create this virtual machine. Alright, it took a few minutes to create the virtual machine. The virtual machine has been created now, so let's click on go to resource. And from here, we can choose to connect to this virtual machine. And like I mentioned earlier, one way of connecting to the virtual machine is via remote desktop. So I'm going to click on remote desktop and download the remote desktop file. Double click on the file and click on connect. I'll type in my username and password here to connect to this VM. And as you can see, in just a few minutes, we've been able to create a virtual machine on Azure. In this video, I showed you how to create an Azure virtual machine. There are a number of tasks that comes together when you create a virtual machine in Azure. When you proceed to create a virtual machine in Azure, other resources also get created with it. Resources such as storage account, network security group, network interface card, IP address, and so on.